MatPat's Game Lab explores the real-life science behind video games.
An 8-episode series with 8 sidecar episodes that are VR. So 8 of those episodes are about individual video games, and it's about taking a video game and breaking it into the real world to test its gameplay mechanics and the science of it. And then the VR portion are these kind of 3 to 5 minute short films that take you even deeper.
Whatever the real-life physics or the real-life challenges are of that game, it actually puts the gamers into that real-life scenario.
And it stems from MatPat's series, Game Theorist, is where he takes these incredibly deep dives into the science of gaming, and this is him taking it to the next level.
I'm MatPat.
When Dan and Matt came to me about Game Lab initially, and we did the pilot episode, there was only one person in my mind that could direct it, and that was Kelly King.
When I was in junior high, I used to play video games non-stop. Everything from Tomb Raider to Metal Gear Solid to Twisted Metal. I was addicted. And I meet Matt, Pat, and Dan, and all of a sudden it's my job to research video games. We brought in every system with all the games we were gonna do for the season, and I would make the crew play the video games with me for research. Ken Wales, the DP, I'd make him play through the games with me so we could adjust our visual style for each episode to emulate the gameplay. Matt Miller was paramount in building a team that could be ahead of me.
So Sky Prendergast and I were the producers, and we had our line producer, Elena Woodhead. Between the three of us, we just call ourselves the producer ladies. So Elena handled, the budget. Sky and I really dived in deep with the locations and the talent. And then we had great executive producers. We had Matt Miller, and we also had Dan Levitt, who was really tapped into the YouTube community and obviously really tapped into MatPat. Between all of us, so we made it happen.
Part of what made the show really fun was finding real-life version of the video games, specifically finding those in locations.
The video games, they're not locked in by any reality, so they can just design and design and design. Mirror's Edge is a perfect example. They design forever on that game. The levels and the buildings and the glass and the steel, it's impossible architecture, it's so beautiful. But the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles is the craziest building you've ever seen in its shape and its scope, and so we thought that would be the closest we could get.
Being in Southern California and having to find a castle that we could have knights battle at when you're in Los Angeles, that doesn't just exist. In fact, when you're in America, that typically doesn't just exist. But what we were able to find was a castle up in Napa Valley, and we found aspects of that at each point that we were trying to recreate these video games. So when we were putting together the crew, it was important to us to find people who had an understanding of the video game world.
Our production designer, Kyla, was a total gamer. She's a super game nerd, and she'd happily admit it. And so she was always one step ahead of me in designing the elements, to the point of I would call her with some great idea, and she'd be like, oh, I'm at the printer printing it right now. And the same was true of wardrobe, with Lauren designing the wardrobe.
We're doing BTS. Because it is the best.
For the Final Fantasy episode, Lauren had to design these wraps for the helmets and these full jockey uniforms. And she's so detailed. Kelly, who is like a Pokemon fanatic, right? She designed her costume to look like a Pokemon character. Not only does it look like the game, but it also looks like the gamer's version of the game.
One of the things that our team has always loved about the video game world is how cinematic it's become over the years, and the way that it really uses a lot of the language of cinema, camera angles and the lighting and the costuming. And so we were really excited to translate that on screen as much as possible.
Most video games, the good ones, tell a story that makes you want to continue the gameplay. You feel a part of it. Taking a video game, for example, like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, the emotional element of having to solve a bomb is so easy. It so easily translates. The hard part is having somebody talking you through solving the puzzle of the bomb in a different location. Not only does it make it difficult to solve the game, but it also makes it difficult to shoot in real life and build a challenge around it.
Oh, I did it!
In early conversations with MatPat, we had discussed the visual storytelling style, and it was very important to always emulate some sort of element of how the game shows you its world.
So they can enter through this way and through that way. This is the only way through this door. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ, okay.
As much as the documentary part would always look the same, the interviews and the Q&As, whenever we'd get to the challenge and the training, it was always very specifically filmed to emulate the game. For example, Mirror's Edge, we would mount cameras to the chest of whoever was taking the challenge then, because in Mirror's Edge, the POV is from about her head or chest height, so you can see her hands moving towards you. You see her feet, and when she does her rolls, you see the whole world roll around. For Rocket League, we mounted cameras in a third-person perspective that was up behind the car looking down, and so as the car turns, the whole world turns. But the drivers in the real cars, they can't see that.
So as you're approaching that ball in real life, it is taking up your entire field of vision. You don't see other cars coming at you from the other end, and the same would be true in Rocket League. It's not something you have to deal with because of that third-person perspective, but it's an interesting thing to think about. Were you actually playing the game in real life?
Yes!
All right, cut.
Game Lab relies so heavily on the experts.
As much as MatPat is the video game expert, we had to find a counterpoint to that conversation, a real-world expert that could challenge the mechanics of the video game for us.
Not only did we have to find people who were experts in their field, looked great on camera, sounded great on camera, but most importantly, they had to be able to teach those skills in a very short period of time to MatPat and the other YouTubers.
So for Rocket League, we needed to find someone who, one, knew about how to do precision driving, and also someone who had done car soccer before. And so we actually went out to the Irwindale Speedway and found this guy who he actually teaches racing to people. He teaches precision driving, and he also happens to be connected to this group that does these Nights of Destruction, where they do car soccer and they also just destroy vehicles as for fun.
Say a game like Final Fantasy and Chocobo Racing, how do you find somebody who's an expert at riding large birds? We found this guy, Joe, who runs an ostrich farm. He's the craziest guy you've ever met, and he sets up these races for ostriches, and he's raised these animals so he could tell you in the real-world scenario what it takes to raise an ostrich so that it's docile enough to race, because they can get quite mean if they're raised the wrong way.
One of the hardest experts to find was for Watchdogs, for a hacking expert, because they either don't want to be known in public as being an expert or they are in jail for being an expert. Once again, we found ourselves very lucky that we found two individuals who were wildly charismatic and entertaining, even to the point where they brought their own, cat ear props.
Oh, that's when he's actually doing the penetration testing.
These experts who do this in the real world would sometimes laugh out loud at the things we were trying to test in the game, but other times they would say, no, that's exactly right. Because, for example, with the hacking episode, those hackers hacked the crew. She rolled in with her pineapple device, and all of a sudden the crew member's phone started connecting to this thing, and she's saying names out loud, people she hasn't met yet. She hacked us, you know what I mean? It was terrifying, and it was real.
This is a really big undertaking. Each episode was essentially a complete movie in and of itself, completely different cast, completely different locations.
Every dollar was like, if you had some spare here, you would give it to this department here to be able to make every episode as special as it could be.
Matt Miller has done such an amazing job of kind of hand-picking and cherry-picking the very best of creatives and the very best of people in their craft. That everyone comes with such a professional background and also such a great personality and vibe and attitude.
They really come from a place of the story and the content come first. And then how do you build your entire triangle underneath that to support that one point where the audience sees it? It's really unique, and it helps you create in a way, specifically as a director, where you feel an enormous net underneath you, where you're not afraid to play and you're not afraid to create.
Coming from the YouTube world and watching digital video, to me, it's like, why do you need all these people? And why is there, we have a 50-person crew on this show. Like, that's crazy to me.
It's a lot of people.
When you do see the final product, I think, the talents of all these people coming together is really going to show off, so.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's a picture wrap on MatPat!
Guys, you guys are best.
When we were shooting the Five Nights at Candy's episode, we did, Trisha's challenge, we did Vernon's challenge, and as the day went on, word got out of how much fun we were having teasing these kids with these animatronics. And we shot MatPat's challenge last, and by the time we shot that challenge, every crew member, people I hadn't seen in hours, filled Video Village, that we were just all behind the camera and we were all dying laughing, and it was the most enjoyable experience I've had on set, I think, ever, because I've never seen a crew come together to enjoy what you were doing like that.
I can't wait for season 2.